Perfect.
There we
So now you have to watch it off.
go. Now it's gonna be
5 seconds ago, you could have said whatever you wanted. Okay.
Oh, that's so.
I know, but if we want to hear what anybody else says.
Wait, what is that?
We just
The
unplugged
speaker.
it earlier, so.
It might be a good investment for some new,
Techwear.
Y'all, I don't know how to use these keyboards anymore. Like chicken pecking over here.
There you go again.
I don't know.
Did I really not bring my phone?
Wow. You made it all the way up here without getting an anxiety attack, huh?
Like, obviously, I'm not.
Can you read my chicken scratch?
Yeah,
There's an NC at the end. Thank you, man.
you are welcome.
Should we use the board and maybe write down like things they wanna?
Yeah,
That's how we should start this, or do you
Yeah,
wanna start it with
I think
us?
usually the easiest way is
I
like,
can write.
yeah, like the topics that we kind of talked about.
Do you want me to put those up now?
We got a couple more minutes.
Oh yeah, let me pull what was yours, because those were a couple good ones actually.
Oh, goodness.
Very good. Oh yeah, no cash CPP, I got this.
Okay. I thought we used to have more than one stool in here.
Stools are nice, stools make it feel less formal.
Yeah.
So I'm with you when sitting, I'll sit on the chair. Let's do proof of funds. I just realized they're probably not gonna be able to see over here, huh?
That's okay.
Okay.
They don't need to see it online. Alrighty, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll let a couple more people trickle in. We'll probably have some people pop on online.
Yep.
I'm Molly, I'm with the Signature Group team. And this is Lauren with the Welcome Home team.
Hello, everybody.
So we are both dedicated buyer's agents. That's all we do.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
That's good.
So that's what we do. That's all our business. So
Yes.
we kind of came up with some ideas of some, and I'm sorry, I have a sinus infection, so I sound horrible. I told her yesterday.
It's
I was like,
okay, I got you.
talk.
We're gonna make you guys talk a lot too.
Yeah. But we came up with some topics of some things that we use as strategies. So is there anything that you guys have questions about or like burning?
This is just
I
a
need to
couple of
learn
them too.
this?
Or any struggles that you've had with getting offers accepted, or just kind of anything you came across when you're getting those offers out for buyers?
Anybody online?
Anybody online? We have her all done. Michelle's in there, so.
I'm sorry, I just came in, but I struggle when I have like an FHA buyer. Like everything else in the offer can be so above and beyond, but they still seem to keep losing.
Okay. What are you finding with those FHA buyers? Like, what is is it just the feedback that the listing agent's saying we didn't want an FHA loan, or?
I haven't had that told directly to me, but I've had it said that a lot of times they'll say things like, well, your offer was just like some others, but they just felt like the terms were a little better. And like, so they've never said that, but you know.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else have anything? Karen, you always got something to say. Give me something. I love you.
Okay, let me think about it.
Okay, back to you. Anybody else? What do you have?
don't know. I mean, you're covering a lot of it.
Okay.
I think we do have a lot.
We have a lot
But yeah,
of
and I think
ideas.
once we start going over some stuff, hopefully it kind of trickles some things that you've ran into problems with. You wanna start with no cash to compete first?
Let's start
Or what do you wanna start
with,
with? This was just a couple I have.
Yeah,
obviously
I
a whole
think-
list.
let's kind of start at the beginning. So pre-qualifying your buyers.
Ooh, yes.
What are you guys doing to pre-qualify your buyers in this market? Yes, Heather?
Yeah, you have
I'm
something to
taking
say?
Molly's advice and I'm making sure they come into the office. And they
Oh,
are required to come and sit with me for
do you?
a buyer consultation.
Yes. So I'll kind of explain that. So I require them in this market. You need to come in and we need to sit down and talk about what the market looks like, why it looks the way that it does, and what that means for you as a buyer. Before I throw them in my car and we're driving all over town and I'm spending my gas, I want to know, do they have the cash to compete in this market? Do they have, in previous markets, a ready, willing, and able buyer was anybody who could get a pre-approval.
Mhm.
That is not the case now because they need to have either cash to compete with closing costs, going over list price, if they're willing to pay a seller's expenses. And I want to know that before I toss them in my car and start showing them around. I've also found that even if they're not ready to buy right now, the NAR puts out a statistic every year. I think it's 90% of buyers will work with the first agent they meet.
Mhm.
So even if they're not ready right now, if I can get you in the office, I can show you my face.
Right.
We're going to continue to move forward together, whether it's next month or 6 months from now. Yeah.
So you
And
basically build a rapport with them by having that first time meeting, even if you find out that they have some things to do or money to save. Now they've met you, they like you, now
we
you
can
have
move forward.
a client.
The other thing that's really important to me, and I don't tell them this, but if you're not willing to come in and spend an hour with me, I'm not willing to spend all of my weekends and my evenings driving around with you in this market.
It goes same thing for the people who, if they're not here, we actually set an hour appointment
Mhm.
to have, and I prefer a face-to-face
Mm.
than just a phone call, because it is extremely important to be able to see facial reactions. When you say, I'm gonna need to know that you have at least $15,000 to $20,000.
Mhm.
I might be able to go, oh, okay, but in my face is saying,
Right.
so I think it's extremely important if you are going that route where you're working with people who are not here, and you are setting up that, do it the best that you can, where it's Google Meet, Zoom, FaceTime, do it to where you can see their face and they can see yours.
Yes.
And be very stern with, yes, this is the amount of money that you need. Don't go, well, I mean, we can try. Because you can try, but try doesn't mean you do.
Mhm.
And in that meeting, I'm setting expectations with them. I have tracked my numbers. I know that most of my buyers are going to take 3 to 5 offers before we get one accepted.
Mhm.
So we're having that conversation in the consultation to help avoid some of the buyer burnout, because when they don't get their first one accepted, they're not as heartbroken.
Right.
They understand that this is the game that we're playing. So if you're not going to come in and meet with me for an hour, you're not going to be my buyer. And I don't mean that in like a, they're not worth my time, but that's the respect between me and my client, that if we have the time, we need to sit down and I want to make sure you're educated before we just jump in the car.
I like that. Yeah, so when you have them there and you've talked finances, I'm gonna ask you questions then, since that's
Okay.
really awesome. Since you have them there, you talked finances, then how do you go about, they don't have a pre-approval? Do you go over options of lenders with them there, and kind of just give them the information?
It depends on where they are in the process, but when I am putting somebody in touch with a lender, I actually put them in a group chat.
Okay.
Because there's too many times the lender says, oh, I called them, they never answered.
Mhm.
The buyer says, they never called me, and I'm in this wheelhouse of who's telling me the truth. So when I put them in that group chat together, there's an accountability, because I can see that the lender has reached out to them and said, hey, I'm so-and-so, here's my link to my approval.
Mhm.
I can also see if the buyer has reciprocated. So it holds some accountability, but it also, and I just tell them, hey, I'm gonna put you in this group chat so you know that the person that's reaching out to you is from me.
Mhm.
That way, doesn't, it kind of sets the tone, like, here we are, but then I can hold them accountable
I like that. So it cuts out the back and forth and you know that you've put them in touch.
Right.
Okay. This is good. Is there anything else you go over in that consult? Do you look at
Like-
houses or kind of do anything, or this is just like strictly? Okay.
If we have a home and they're pre-approved and they're like, hey, I wanna go see 123 Main Street, we'll schedule it for after the consult. I also do things a little bit different because I do have a showing partner now. So she does come into the consult with me and then she will typically leave and I'll finish up the consult with them. That way, when they're out showing with her, they know who she is and why she's there. But we do that together.
Is anyone doing anything similar right now when you first meet your clients?
I started doing the buyer consult for the first time, but it's working well.
Are you doing and going over anything different than what Molly kind of said she does?
No, I'm not as straightforward about how much money it's going to take because that's a hard conversation, and I need to do that to be the solid voice and not the wishy-washy voice.
Can I ask you what makes you nervous about having that conversation?
I don't like the idea of telling people how much they can spend. And I know that that's not what we're doing. We're telling them how much it's gonna take to get in the house, which is what they wanna know. They want that answer, but it still feels like telling them how much to spend. So usually I phrase it by, I stay out of my clients' pockets and I will never tell them how much to spend. What I will tell you is how much I've seen it taking to get into the house, but I hate the conversation, I really do.
I like having, like, I have a calculator kind of pulled up where I like just being like, okay, so like, let's say you're making average income of this and you want to buy an average home that costs like this much. And like, you have average credit score, 30-year loan or whatever, and I just kind of plug it all in and show them right there kind of what the closing costs would look like, what, like, depending on the loan, their type of loan they're looking at, what their down payment would look like, and just kind of show them kind of the range of what they could expect to pay minimum, because then you have to also, consider that they're probably going to end up paying more than that for, if they're paying out of pocket, for the appraisal contingency and stuff like that.
And Nikki, I love your approach because that's also the conversation I have is this is what I have seen,
Yes.
and I explain to them, like, this is what I do. I work buyers. This is what I'm seeing my buyers win with. And then I tell them, especially if it's a couple, go home and have a conversation over dinner tonight about what is comfortable for you.
Yes.
Because then you're putting the ball back in their court to know if they have the available funds, what are they willing to spend. I mean, I know how much is in my bank account. If I were to go buy a house today, I wouldn't drain it all, but you're putting that, you're giving them the education and then you're sending them home to make a decision together.
I like that, kind of push it off my plate.
Yeah, I do exactly what she just said. If someone does ask me like, well, how much is it gonna cost, or what do competitive offers look like that's a question I get probably every single time, because we tell them in the consultation what the market's like. So what does a competitive offer look like? I'll usually use the last house I put under contract just because it'll be like fresh in my brain. If it was something of that, and I'll tell them, the situation, how we went about it, this is how much they used, and then we kind of go into like what some of those things mean. And then I kind of leave them with that. So then again, you're not telling them you have to have $5,000 for due diligence. This was just the last one that got accepted that, was picked over everyone else's. And I just use it kind of as a guide. But I don't not like having the money conversation because I just feel like they're coming to me for advice and they know, like, they believe that we know 100% what we're doing. So when they ask me how much is it going to take, if I lie to them and tell them, oh, well, I don't want to put a number on it, sometimes then when we get into competing and they lose 5 houses, then it's kind of like, well, if I told them that and was a little uncomfortable up front, then you kind of save them that.
You save them that heartache and it saves your heartache too.
Yeah.
Because I think Lauren would agree with me, every time I get a rejection, I feel it just as much as they do.
That is my least favorite phone call in the entire
And
world.
I sit there, I'm scared of that phone before I make the
And if you can get ahead of that by having an uncomfortable conversation in the beginning, you can potentially save them a lot of heartache. Because I was actually talking to my coach about that today, is every month that they wait, they're gonna have to give up something. So every month that they're not willing to play the game, your prices are gonna go up. Are you gonna have to give a bedroom up that you were wanting? Are you gonna get the garage you thought you wanted? Because every month we don't move and we're not ready to move, you lose a little bit.
I also feel like sometimes we talk about closing costs because, you know, once upon a time buyers didn't pay them. So now I almost put that back onto the lender. And I'll say, if you have questions about your closing costs, or I'll sometimes say, did you speak with your lender about what your closing costs would look like? Because then it's kind of not giving them a number, and then they know to contact them for closing costs. And that's when you could jump into, you know, deposits go towards your closing costs. So it all kind of like ties together. But I feel like there's definitely ways to not be so direct with them.
No, for sure.
But the money conversation is absolutely critical to save you time and them anguish.
Yeah.
The sooner the better.
Right. And I've had conversations with people, I'm like, hey, if we're not willing to do this and we spend this time, you could be in a position, I've told them, like, you're gonna be homeless. If you want to not play the game where we need to play it, let's go ahead and start looking at some other options of moving on post, getting a rental, whatever. And sometimes that's a kick in the behind.
And a rental conversation is very helpful in them re-looking at what's in their bank account, because they will tell you, I don't have the money for it, and they do. When you show them, these are the rentals that are currently available in the areas that you're looking, that's a very hard hit for them, because I think that they're used to thinking that they're available. So the question is, okay, so it's purchase, rent, or live on post. Which one do you want to do?
Right.
How ready are you to live on post? Is that what you want to do? Is your wife ready for that?
Especially when they realize what their rent is going to cost them for the home that they're going to be getting in versus what your mortgage is going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So using that BAH and saying, okay, so do you want all of your BAH to go back to the military, or do you want it to be able to use it to invest in something that you can later on have a bit of equity in and potentially sell?
Right. So I think that's a good segue into, Lauren had a really cool way about how she does offers. So I think that's kind of a good segue.
You want to do this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how you write it.
I mean, I feel like we'll tie everything.
Yeah, we'll kind of tie it all back together, but when you guys are writing offers, what are you finding is winning in this market?
Shortening the time frame up a lot. I can have house inspection, guest inspection, everything done in 4 days myself, so.
You can.
What vendors are you using?
What
magic do you have?
Yeah. Wait a minute, when you say things like that and then you don't post it on Facebook and you got everybody asking you, you need to post that stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
Who are your vendors?
Well, I know the key is calling them first thing, and I guess working your favoritism, because I've worked with them for so long.
Yeah.
Again, he's not
So-
giving us who they are.
So you're winning all the offers is what I'm hearing. Okay.
I put in like a 1 week time frame, if I don't need it, but I mean, I've got it there.
Okay.
That
For
was,
your due diligence?
yeah, but I don't do no earnest money, so I just do a due diligence money and then give them the due diligence period of under a week. And then I just go ahead and call them and try to get it scheduled ahead so that it's ready to go.
Right.
That works, that's worked really smooth so far already for me.
Are you seriously getting all your stuff ordered and done within a week?
And the repair request negotiated?
I mean, I've not got the repair list off, negotiated, but I've got all my inspections, everything's done in 4 days.
But if you don't have your requests negotiated within the due diligence.
There's no earnest money, so
So there's nothing for them
There's
to
nothing
lose.
on the table. Okay.
that's why I do that. That's why I learned by asking the buyer, listing agents, what are you looking for? I mean, I'm just drilling them, what are you seeing that's appealing?
Yep.
Right.
So we have that on here too. I feel like it kind of ties in with building agent rapport for sure.
And kind of going back to that, the agent rapport, what I mean by that is I call agents. I keep my relationships with them, people I've done past deals with, because I have won more than one offer because it wasn't the highest, but that agent knew I could get it to closing. So the communication, the one thing that she and I both do is I'll call an agent or I'll text them and I'll say, hey, what is your seller looking for? What's important to them? A lot of agents have started to get a little cagey about it. They don't want to answer that question, but you can also phrase it in different ways that they don't realize what you're asking. I will call sometimes and I'll just say, hey, how many offers do you have on the table right now? Oh, I've got 6. Okay, cool. Of those 6 offers, how many are actually competitive? And that tells me if I need to really move heavy into due diligence. Do I need to, because we have an assumption that everybody has the knowledge that we have about what's going on in the market. One of our listing agents had 47 offers on a house in Rayford listed for $195. And I asked her, I said, how many are competitive? 7 of those 47.
And all of them were from PW.
Really?
The competitive ones.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I thought you meant
Yeah.
47.
No.
I was like, wow, the whole firm wrote offers on that house. That's a nice house.
Dang!
Jeez.
But asking questions like that to kind of dig a little bit deeper, because a lot of agents will say, well, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you what they're looking for. Well, no, you can't, you're right. But I can ask you questions that, like, I'll even call them and say, hey, if I were to write an offer of X, Y, and Z, where would I be in line?
I call and make a joke sometimes too, and I'm like, I'm a buyer's agent. You know how this market is. I'm like, do you have any information you can tell me that the seller's looking for? Because sometimes they'll disclose quick close, longer close that they need to stay in the house, and like those are things that someone else may have not thought to ask. So sometimes I literally just play I'm a buyer's agent. You know how the market is. Like, how can you help me? And then she literally called the seller to ask him what she could disclose, so that the agent was pulling for me. They didn't get the offer because it was not the best one, and that's what the client chose, but the agent was like, I was pulling for you because it kind of ties in with something else we talked about, sending all your docs over, the RPD, the MOG, the key release, having the entire offer filled out on the listing side and the buyer side. Like, those are things that they're like, oh, you filled out the whole offer? And I'm like, do people not fill out the whole offer? Like, was this optional? So just sometimes by calling, making jokes and having like small talk, they will kind of release information that they may have not told someone else. So it's definitely helpful to build a rapport with the agents. And then even after it goes under contract, I've had agents write me, I have a house down the street, or your buyer's still looking, and then you get first dibs at another house just because you built a good relationship with that agent.
And that doesn't have to be just when you're writing offers. Like, just like you would prospect your clients, prospect other agents. Because by building that relationship, when I call some agents, nobody else can get them on the phone. But I call them and they pick up. I even had an agent the other day call me and she's like, yeah, Molly, she's like, your offer was off by $5,000, but I told him you could get this deal done and we wouldn't have this merry-go-round. And they won, and that's a win for my client because they didn't have to go as high as some of these other people were willing to.
And that's value that we provide for all of our clients.
Yeah.
It's not just that one client that we're working with at that point in time. By doing the work that we do and doing it at a high level, it is setting our future clients up as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think something else that kind of ties into that is if somebody tells you something, do it. Explain to your clients that they don't have to give us this information. And this is what they're asking for. This will give you an advantage. Because there is nothing more irritating to a listing agent than they share all this information with you and you send them an offer that's absolutely nothing they told you.
Yep.
Because then at that point, you wasted their time.
Or if your buyer can't give them that,
Explain.
tell them why.
Right.
So they know that you were listening.
Yep, exactly.
Flip side of that, if you have another agent that shares information with you, out of the goodness of their heart, don't blast them on social media.
Yeah.
Because that person might not share anything with you
Anybody.
ever again, or the rest of us. So, look out for the industry as a whole. And if you do have someone share information with you, take it and be grateful.
Right. And on the flip side of that, if your offer doesn't get accepted, reach out to them and say, hey, why? Stacey, I think you were just asking, that's kind of one of the things you brought up is nobody has said outright to you that it's an FHA loan. Ask them. Hey, and I will say, hey, I know you can't tell me the terms of the offer that you accepted, but can you tell me where I got beat out? Was it purchase price? Don't tell me numbers, but was it purchase price? Was it due diligence money? Most people will tell you.
As I say, I've always had them tell me, usually because they feel bad. They'll literally be like, I feel so bad for buyer's agents right now. So they'll pretty much tell you whatever you want to know most of the time.
Yeah. And those ones who will tell you the dollar amount, use that information.
Mhm.
Because I do let my buyers write one crap offer. I let them do it once. And I let them learn the hard way. Because
It works.
sometimes they need to see it, just like listing agents, when you go in and you say, hey, your house smells like cat. And they're like, no, it doesn't. And then 7 other buyers agents come in and give feedback. It's the same on the list on the buy side. Give them the feedback from these other agents and saying, this is what got beat out.
Mhm.
And then I'll kind of make a joke like, you ready to play my way now?
Another thing on feedback. So a lot of times we think right now that feedback, the house is going under contract so quickly, we don't really need to leave feedback. Leave the feedback, because like Lauren said, one of them, somebody says, well, hey, I've got a house down the street.
Mhm.
If you leave feedback and that listing agent is like, wow, look, they're leaving feedback, they gave a pretty decent offer, they may have another property that's similar to that
Mhm.
that they could offer to you, that if you left good feedback, that agent may come back to you and say, you know what, Molly, I know that we didn't get this one, but I've got 123 Main Street that's coming on the market in 3 weeks. I'm getting pictures, I'll send them to you.
Just like our relationship with our clients is important,
Mhm.
it's just as important with the people that you work with. You potentially will probably sell that client 1 or 2 houses. How many deals are you potentially going to do with that listing agent? That having a good relationship can just make everything a lot smoother. Take one of your.
Yeah, which one should we go into now?
So let's talk about actual terms.
Oh, okay.
So what are you doing right now?
You mean as far as like how to win them or just doing the, so I feel like that goes back to the first thing that we talked about with asking the listing agent, like, what are they looking for? I had one over the weekend specifically tell me they want a high DD. And I was like, okay. So then I go back and that's something that I tell my clients. I do the same thing Molly said. I'm like, I have this little nugget of information. This is what the seller's looking for. I feel like maybe a couple months ago, it was all the rage about a high DD. And now I'm finding more success with a lower DD and then sometimes no earnest money, or a low DD, a little bit of earnest money, and then putting more towards the appraisal. Because we're selling one of our houses right now. And when we were selling, I was kind of like, a lot of DD money is great if they're going to terminate. But for me, if you just give me enough money to let me cover another month's worth of my mortgage and you terminate, like I really didn't lose too much versus giving me more money if the home doesn't appraise. Like that's where I'm actually going to make money. So I feel like once I kind of started thinking where the sellers are going to look at their bottom dollar, the due diligence, it's still important, but some sellers will, or listing agents openly have shared they're looking for X, Y, and Z. And then ultimately she told me that on Sunday, and then Monday he ended up picking the highest over appraised value one. So I guess, they can change their mind at any moment, but I feel like it's just about talking to the agent and kind of asking, like she said, how many offers do you have? What's this looking like? What kind of condition is the house in, right? It's on a crawl space. When was the roof repaired? Like, go look at the HVAC. If it's not a good home, I don't always feel comfortable letting them put astronomical amounts of DD because I'm not best representing the buyer that way. So I feel like there's a lot of things that go into why you would do due diligence money, high amounts, not high amounts, offering over appraised value, and then really just reiterating to the buyers, like at the end of the day, like this is worst case scenario, you may pay X amount over appraised value, and then that kind of goes back to the money conversation. So I feel like it all kind of ties in, but I feel like the first part for the offer is I talk to the list agent first, then I call my buyers and we talk offer details usually. Because it's a lot of information at once. You start talking to them about purchase price, due diligence money, earnest money. First time buyers are like, you want me to do what with what money and where does it go and how do I lose it? And like, so for me, it's a lot of, we kind of have the conversation in the house when we find it, but then I reach out, I'm like, all right, I'm going to call the listing agent right now. Let me see what I can find out. And then I will give you a call and then we can go over everything. So I have a little bit better of an idea of kind of where we're at, whether we're competing. Sometimes you catch it early. You put in a really great offer, the sellers just accept it. They'll tell you, like, my seller doesn't want to play games, just bring me a really good offer, and it's worked. I've also been where Molly said, the agent was like, I absolutely love this, and she openly said, you guys do not have the best offer. She emphasized, I work with her all the time, like the team is really great, and she called me and they picked the offer. So I feel like there's a lot that goes into the terms, but speaking on highlighting the terms, something I think most of the people on the team started doing, and you guys may already do, in the subjects and the body of the email, I'm actually highlighting, is it a conventional loan? What is the purchase price? What is the DD money? How, like, kind of a summary of the appraised value, just so that when they forward it over to the seller, what if they miss the KW addendum that has on there over appraised value? So it's like right there, and I've had agents like write me and be like, thank you so much for doing that, because sellers sometimes don't know what they're looking at and they're just reading through it. You hope they remember it. So kind of doing like a
And when
highlight.
they have 47 offers.
Exactly.
Well, it's
you know,
like a cover
lot.
letter. It's just a cover letter for
Yep.
your
Yeah,
offer.
that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And-
I like it.
Yeah, and by doing that, and I love that because I don't do that right now, but by putting that in there, most of these listing agents are using some kind of spreadsheet
Mm-hmm.
to show their clients. And you've just made their job a heck of a lot easier
Yep.
because everything's right there.
Yep.
And something that I do was on the buyer side, like she was saying, you know, you're in the house, you're talking about due diligence, earnest money, you know, blah, 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 all these things. I have an email. It's in my drafts and it says, hey, so excited to help you write your offer. This is what I need to complete it. Purchase price. What do you want to offer? I would recommend between X and X. Due diligence money. And I put in there, reminder, this is the non-refundable one should you terminate. I would start here.
I like that.
And that way it's all very clear cut to them of what they're writing down, you know, rather than me just saying, oh, how much due diligence, how much this? And we've given you guys our email addresses and phone numbers. So if there's something that we use that you guys want, please email us or text us so that we can send it to you.
So with that email, one of the things that I do is I put basically a call to action for them to respond back to it.
Yes.
So that if they come back and say, I had no idea that ... So, and you know, we don't want to pull it back up and say, look, on June 1st.
I told you.
It's a protection for us
Right,
now.
It
it is. I mean,
Mhm.
we have it. So in the instance that they ever come back and it ever becomes nasty, it is a CYA.
And I also do it for that reason, but also because I make mistakes.
Mhm.
We all make mistakes filling out these offers. And by doing that, I'm giving myself the accountability that I heard them correctly. If they say $10,000 and I thought they said 9, I would rather have it in writing of what they're telling me they want to do. And it also puts it back in their court. This is your decision.
Mhm.
Here's my education and here's my recommendation. What makes sense for you?
And when I tell them that, I kind of add in, because it is on them, that like, I don't know what the other offers look like. Even if they tell me what the seller's looking for, I don't know what the other 5 or 10 offers are. So I just tell them at the end of the day, I need you to just feel comfortable with what you're offering and know tomorrow morning, if you didn't get this home of your dreams, like, are you going to be okay with that? And did you give it everything you had? And that's how I try to tell people to make their decisions is I don't know what the other offers are. I know what I think a reasonable offer would be or a competitive offer would be, but somebody else may have done a ridiculous offer. And I usually kind of make a joke about it. Like, if you don't get it and this is your offer, someone else did something ridiculous, like we'll find you a better house and like, you know, something like that. But I try to always put it back on like, we can advise you, but I don't know what the other offers look like or, you know, things like that. So that it kind of takes the disappointment.
I kind of put some of that fate in there. I'm like, hey, if this was your best
It's
offer and we
been meant
didn't
to
win,
be.
this wasn't the house for you.
Yep.
And you just kind of keep them moving forward in that direction.
Yep.
I
like that.
But with terms, it's not always the highest offer, but it's the best offer.
Mhm.
You know, and I think a lot of times, a lot of agents will say, we offered $50,000 over list.
Mm.
Okay, cool. Did you include an appraisal gap?
Yep.
Because if you didn't include that,
You could offer $1 million.
Yep.
you're not
Right.
guaranteeing anything at that point. Yeah, like different little things, like she was saying, you know, you can kind of play with that earnest money and due diligence.
Yep. I always make jokes. It's just a matter of doing math and moving numbers around.
Yeah.
Like it's like a puzzle at the end of the day. If they tell you I have $10,000, you know, okay, how much are their closing costs? Where can this money go? And it's literally then just a matter of moving stuff around. That's how I always try to think of it. I'm like, it's a puzzle. Let's figure it out.
Let's figure out where
Let's
this
see
money
where we can
go.
put our money.
And I do the same thing. You mentioned that you do a proof of funds with something that's over.
Yep. Well, because for me, I feel like if they have identical offers, they're all at 160,000, then everybody offers them, you know, everybody offers 165, but we provide a $5,000 appraisal addendum with the proof that they have the $5,000 and 2 other people do the same thing without the proof. I'm probably going to be inclined to pick the person who's showing me they have the $5,000. So that was something recently that we've kind of started doing that I've just been having buyers. I'm like, do you have the money? Can you send me something to send to the sellers to show?
What are you using for that? Are you having their bank write them a letter, or are you sending a screenshot of a bank
They've been
statement?
sending me a screenshot of the bank statement.
With the blacked out
Well,
Yes,
but
oh yeah,
that
they
is
don't, I
on
don't
the
put
list.
any of their personal, but yeah, I do
That's
have
what
that.
did.
I did have someone have a bank letter when we had a little more time. But yeah, I feel like just sometimes if all the offers are identical and you're the only person that showed the funds, I probably bet on the money that the person that has the money that they're showing me, so.
And I do it a little bit differently. I just include that money in their earnest money and due diligence.
Okay.
Because if you're already willing to pay that money, go ahead and put it on the table and show them you've got it.
Yep. Yep.
And that's where you can have that conversation of how do you want to divide it? Because if you're offering, I mean, let's just easy math. Let's say your closing costs are $5,000 and you're offering them, $5,000 over appraised value. If I go ahead and put that money into some kind of deposit, now it can get risky. You have to think about that, and you have to explain that and educate and say, listen, if we put this, if we put all this money on due diligence and you walk away, it's gone.
You might not be buying another house if you don't have
Right.
more money.
You might need to buy a tent and live in somebody's
Yep.
yard, but you educate them to make that decision, but by putting it all out there up front, they've already paid the money. Then they're pleasantly surprised when they think they don't have to bring anything to closing,
Mhm.
because it's a
The
money.
happy text message, my
Yeah.
closing was only blah blah.
Oh,
I
you
don't
got $1,000 back. And they don't realize they've already paid that money.
Yep.
So it's kind of like a reverse psychology.
Yep.
So I do it a little bit differently.
No, I like that.
And the only reason I say that is because with proof of funds, if you're sending them a screenshot of their bank account, what's gonna stop that seller from coming back and saying, well, give me $15,000.
It's true. Yep.
You've got it, give me this.
Yep.
So,
It's kind of the same thing with pre-approval letters. If you do them for over, especially if it's a lot over, and you're not giving them X amount that the other offer might be, then they kind of know you are able to
Right.
offer more. So yeah, that goes both ways.
So I have that in mind, maybe each offer, right? Is that what y'all do on the pre-approvals?
You what?
Each pre-approval letter, I have them make one for that property. Is that,
I have a lender that gives it to me as
Yeah.
A P to edit it?
document, and then I fix it.
Yeah.
well, I was making sure that's what
I do the same thing.
I do. Yeah, so-
Also use a local lender,
Yep.
because as a listing agent, if you bring me two offers and they look exactly the same, and I love both agents and one is a local and one is not, I have to go with the, I will say, are you willing to go to a local lender and get it to me within 12 hours or whatever, or like a time frame? But
yeah. And I think that ties perfectly into kind of what we're talking about. Like, it's not always, a lot of people's offers are looking very similar.
Yep.
So you can also have your lender, if they're comfortable with it, call the listing agent. Say, hey, our offer is, I've looked at their numbers, they're solid. Sometimes it comes down to things you wouldn't think it would matter.
Mhm.
Who is your lender? How long is your, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry.
You're fine. Due diligence,
Yeah, like how long, those different kinds of things. You can even tell them, I plan to use this inspector, like
Ooh, I
different things. The more communicative you are,
Mhm.
but it really does sometimes come down to something as simple as your offer looked exactly the same, and this person's using USAA and this person's using somebody local.
so just a caveat on the speed part. In working with our buyers, we have a closing date. And if we don't meet that closing date, we have a 14-day grace period right now.
Until July
Yeah,
first.
for now.
And after that's done, if a seller is looking at it and saying, ooh, prices have gone up and I could get probably $5,000 to $6,000 more and I'm not in contract and I terminate and I keep this $8,000 that they did, that's a pretty good payday for me.
Mhm.
So we have got to be careful working with our buyers on I understand we want to do speed and we want to get it to where, hey, we can get this closed quickly, but July 1, it's going to 7 days instead of 14 days. And
And there's no way to protect that. I mean,
There is none.
how would you?
there's none.
Right. They're just out all their money.
And right now during this time of year, appraisers are very busy. And we can get upset with them all we want, but there's not a whole lot that we can do.
I haven't done this yet. I actually wrote it on my list because I was talking to Lindsay about it because one of our sellers had a buyer offer this, but the buyer also put in an addendum that every day if closing was delayed past the date on contract, they would pay them a per diem per day. So that seller kind of knows then, even if it doesn't happen on this day, I'm making a little bit of extra money if it takes another 4 or 5 days to close. So I thought that was kind of something outside the box because I haven't done that yet. So
That is interesting.
You can also do seller possession.
Yep.
So because we're having a lot more sellers right now who are going ahead and listing, and saying, we can't get out until August 1. That's fine.
Mhm.
Just let me close 30 days and then you can stay in the house and, you can even, and this is extreme, but even offer it to them at their rent back.
Mhm.
You're not making a mortgage payment until whenever it is.
Yep.
But the max you can do if you're FHA or VA is 60 days.
We also had some people like seller pay closing costs, kind of things like that, touching just on like getting offers accepted. You could do, again, depending on the condition of the home, only appraisal required repairs, and then we also usually throw in there termite, just because obviously if it comes back to termites, but I feel like there's definitely little things they could do, like obviously paying the seller's closing costs versus maybe having $5,000 to pay over appraisal, maybe like we don't have $5,000, we have $1,000 that'll cover the closing costs, so I feel like sometimes it's just kind of getting creative with what you're doing.
Excise tax.
And Sandy commented that she did a last minute cash offer with proof of funds. It was more than 200 of the asking price, and the seller said, since they have it, give me 20 more over list. That is where that proof of funds can bite you, because then you're really throwing all their cards out on the table. In that case, I would say, have a nice day.
I don't wanna work with a seller like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless your buyer wants it, and it's not our money.
Yeah.
It is their money.
Mhm.
And I know on our team, we've had conversations about having a hard time advising people to put as much due diligence money as they're putting down. And we've had a lot of conversations about shifting our mindset about that, because it is what the market is asking for. It's not us asking for it. It's what the market is showing us is needed. And yes, my job is to get you a good deal. My job is also to guide you and get you into a home. That doesn't mean I'm getting it for you below value and I'm getting you a great deal, because those don't exist right now. They're rare. But I would say shifting your mindset around that money, it's not our money. It's theirs. And all you can do is provide them the education.
And I always tell them like a good deal right now is your offer gets accepted, they give you, they do repairs, they give you an allowance, your house appraises, you don't have to appraise. As far as I'm concerned in this market, that's a good deal and like a grand slam. So when that happens, I'm like, do you realize the seller just gave you a $2,000 allowance when they could have told you to go, I don't tell them go kick rocks, but you guys know what I mean, when they could have done absolutely nothing and your house appraised, you didn't even have to use your appraisal addendum for 5,000 over. So to me, those are a good deal, if you want to say it that way in this market,
Right.
or like a win.
I don't know how many of you guys have taken bold, but one of the bold laws is when you change the way you look at things, the way, what is it?
I know
Change
exactly.
the way you look at things and the things you look at.
Change.
Yep.
And that's really important in this market. Yeah, it's up there. I couldn't read it from here, even with my glasses. What else are you guys, let's see, it was Saturday, so there was nothing.
Oh,
we
no
could
cash
do.
to compete. Do you have
Yeah.
something on that one? That's good.
So do you guys have buyers right now who don't have cash?
Oh, yes, lots.
Oh, yeah?
They still think they can buy.
Yeah. And what conversations and strategies are you guys using in those cases?
Save some money. Go ask a friend. Phone a friend.
Is that what you call them?
Phone a friend. Go take out a loan, don't do that. Anybody have anything?
I've talked with one guy, because he's not opposed to doing repairs. They have several rental properties, and so he's been through that a lot. And I've said, you may need to look for a house that no one else wants.
It's been on the market for a while.
Yeah, so that's one strategy I look at is how long has it been sitting on the market? please look at your history of listing, because sometimes when people put it in coming soon, it could have been in coming soon for that 21 days. Hits the market the first day, it shows it's been active for 22 days.
Yeah.
So look at that history to know, is this something that's actually been sitting for that long? But I do that, I look at it and I say, okay, they're selling it as is. And I will look for red flags. If they're a VA or an FHA buyer, where that appraisal is gonna be a lot more stringent on repairs, then we'll go out and look at it, and we'll look at those red flags and say, listen, they can still buy that house if they're willing to do the repairs themselves. Because just because it's being sold as is, maybe they don't have the money to pay $20,000 over list price, but they could do a $600 or $700 repair. So we kind of look at that. Another thing we look at is off-market properties. So do you guys know how to kind of search that and look for properties that might be available
No,
or might be willing to sell?
no.
Okay. So if I have a buyer who says, I've got one right now, she was getting Jack Britt under 200,000 and she wants a seller to pay her closing costs.
Oh,
Yeah.
We've had the conversation.
it's gonna be an easy find.
She's moving into an apartment this week because we can't find it. So what we're doing is we're looking at neighborhoods in Jack Britt that might be priced around 200, looking at when they bought it 3 to 5 years ago or older. Did they rent it last year? Might they be ready to sell now when that renter is coming up? So did they rent it out about 8 months ago? Would they be ready to sell it? I use Fast People Search because I don't want to pay for another system to look people's numbers up, but I'll put that seller's phone number, their name, into Fast People Search. Usually I can find a phone number and I'll just call them and say, hey, I have a buyer who's looking in your neighborhood. I know that you rented your property out about 8 months ago. When that tenant's lease is up, would you be interested in selling?
I like that.
Because then I can potentially get them what they need in this market. Now it takes a lot more legwork. That's for
That's
one
a-
person, that's a lot. But I can also kind of be her hero when it
I was
happens.
just gonna say, you look like a superhero to that person.
And when we have call night this upcoming Thursday, if anyone is in the position that they want to do that, I'm doing a call night.
Mhm.
That's a good idea.
If I can't find a phone number, I send them a letter. Hey, I've got a letter, and I'll put their name. I've got, the Barnes family looking for, exactly what your house provides. If you'd be interested in selling, please give me a call. If I can't find a phone number.
I also use, obviously, I'm on a team, but even just in coming soons in general, every now and then, if we get a listing on the team that's coming soon, I mean, they have to have some type of money to buy a house, right? They might not have $5,000 or $10,000 to compete, but they may have $3,000 or something where you can still put in a normal old school offer, give them due diligence, give them earnest, and it's in, coming soon, and you make a sight unseen offer, but it might be a way to get your buyer in a house without having to compete, because that's exactly what it comes down to, is when they have no money, they can't compete. So where do you find the houses? And sometimes if the seller's like, I don't want to haggle, I just want, give me the list price for my house, or maybe you gamble over a couple thousand and say, hey, worst case, you may have to, if it's, VA, you may have to pay a couple thousand, but I guess that also depends on how much money they have to buy a house. I feel like people have always needed a little bit of money, and there's always that misconception, I don't need money to buy a house, I'm using my VA loan, and it's like, you don't need your closing costs, but everyone's always needed some type of money to buy a house. So as long as I feel like sometimes they have a little bit of money and you can just get a decent offer in, you can go and coming soon and try to find them a house.
Sandy asked, what search is it? Sandy, I literally go into the MLS and I will search properties that sold 3 years ago or that rented 8 months ago. So I'll go in there and just search it on the MLS, find the address, kind of look at the terms. I don't know if you guys know, I'm sure you guys know this, but when you go into the MLS, you can actually see on Realist and things like that, how much of the loan did they take out? You could, and some people don't want to fool, like Lauren was saying, with coming soon, they don't want to fool with all these people traipsing through their house. They are happy to sell it. Hey, I got what I needed. Nobody even had to come in and look at it. Use the sight unseen addendum, protect yourself.
Yep.
But some people don't want to fool with it. And I always call the listing agent and say, hey, I saw that and coming soon. I have a buyer who, is your seller looking to take this to the market, or would they be willing to accept something prior
Especially
to?
if it's currently tenant occupied too.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Because those always typically sit a little bit longer too, because
It's harder to get shown.
in one of them right now, it literally says like the tenants won't allow showings or
Mhm.
something like
Yeah.
that. And it's just like, okay, well, you probably would have loved a sight unseen offer
Right.
when it was incoming soon and you wouldn't have even had to worry about it. So,
Just sit on a couch in a row while you do the walk.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
We have one that the tenant has declined the showing 6 times.
that's good. It's gonna sell real fast.
So, that is an option. We could just send them an offer.
Mhm.
Because once that offer is accepted, they have to let you in the house.
Mhm.
They have to provide you the right to do your inspections. So you can still get in there. I'm not saying do this, but you could get in there and not ever turn in due diligence money and be like, that's why they wanted to pull your offer. Now, that's not gonna create a great relationship with a listing agent.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it. I've seen it happen.
But also, if they don't have a lot of offers or they don't have any offers, you could probably get away with a lower due diligence too.
And they haven't lost anything. If it was coming soon.
Right, you haven't kept the house off the market, it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's been my best friend if I've had anybody. I mean, some buyers truly like right now just isn't the time for them to buy a house, and that's the other, I feel like hard conversation to have with them is realizing like this might not be the market for you to purchase a house right now, but I usually will try to exercise coming soon as much as we can.
What else are you guys doing right now? Or what are you struggling with?
Is that Brian?
I think that was Geraldo.
I think one of the questions I run into, just because like I'm working with various different types of buyers and, they're putting in offers on homes anywhere from, $70,000 to $300,000. And I guess it's just trying to like sort out what's kind of the right threshold of like how far over list price you should be going for these various different price houses, because I know it's not gonna be the same for $300,000 versus $70,000. So do you guys have any advice for like what you're seeing or like what's getting accepted for, such, I don't know, different price ranges?
I think what I'm seeing is in the higher price points where you have less competition,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not having to provide as much due diligence, and I'm talking 300 and up.
Yep.
I'm not having to compete. 'Cause
Right.
Our average price point in this market is 200,000
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
So if you're playing in that space, you're gonna have to really set your offer apart
Mm-hmm.
by doing not one of, but probably all high due diligence,
Right,
high list price, appraisal gap. You're gonna have to do it all to really make yourself set apart.
right.
Whereas in the higher price point, you might be dealing with 1 or 2 other offers. But I think it also comes down to what is your buyer willing to do. We can advise them all day long. Something I look at and I ask them in their initial consultation is, how long do you expect to be here? Is this going to be a rental property for you, or are you looking to sell this in 3 years? Because if they tell me, I'm looking to sell it in 3 years, I might say, you know what? Then I wouldn't offer $20,000 over this
Yeah, you're not
property.
gonna,
Because
equity.
what is my number one job for them? To advise and protect.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know that you are only gonna be here for a year and you're gonna put 20K into a house, in this market, maybe you'll get it in 6 months, I don't know.
Who knows, right?
But
Probably not.
that's not, it's what are they comfortable with?
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to having that hard conversation in the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's why like I said, I had that conversation and they've already got that number in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're at the house, they're in love, and they're gonna make an emotional decision rather than a logical one. So if they make that decision when we're at the consultation or when they go home and we talk about it later, when we get to that house, then I say, hey, they're like, oh, paid $10,000 on list price. And I'll say, you know what, you told me 5. Let's change. Well, this is the house, okay? And we'll talk about it.
Yep.
Because that emotional decision, if they're having to make all of those decisions at the house,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. And they might, quite frankly, make a very irrational
Yeah.
decision, so I think,
Also, Molly, like we've talked before, go to the MLS solds, and see the percentage of list to sale ratio and
yes,
kind of guide them that way.
I love that.
Quick CMA,
Yeah.
I'll
Mhm.
pull it all up and print it and send that to them, and then let them see that, listen, you're looking at, for the 200,000 in Jack Britt, this is what I pulled up for you. You can see that the past, here, close, all of those are this much over. So that was a month ago,
Yeah.
and each month we're seeing it increase. So when I tell you that I feel that the amount is this is how I'm coming up with this number.
Okay.
This is information I'm getting from listing agents. So it's not, we're not giving you this number.
But I didn't just pull this out of thin air.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. These are the cold hard facts a month ago of what things were being offered and accepted to you. So,
Yeah, I always do the CMA, but like I didn't think about using it like that.
but you don't have to do the full CMA.
Yeah,
You do-
I see what you
right.
mean, the quick one.
Yeah.
Well, and along those lines, I'll also look at what's pending.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
there's a house over in Hollywood Heights, and one of my clients sent it to me, and it's listed for like 150. The last thing that sold in that neighborhood was 110, 89 and 110.
But they're right across the street. Ashland sold one for 145 there.
Okay, but that's my point, is there are like I think there's 5 or 6 houses in that neighborhood that are pending in the 130 to 150 range, yes. So what I did, picked up the phone, I called those listing agents and said, hey, I know you're under contract, have you gotten your appraisal back yet?
Yes.
Has it met value? Because then I feel more confident telling him, I think you could go here, because he's gonna look at that data and go, well, 110, I'm gonna offer him 112, well, that was a month ago.
Yeah.
So like she said, you can, again, building relationships, just give them a call and say, hey, did it appraise? I got a client looking to write an offer over there, and I'm just struggling to find these comps to their appraise.
I call them all the time if like I can't find a comp or something, like, and I'll just be like, hey, and they're usually pretty good about it. I mean, unless they have like 50 offers, they'll probably tell you to go kick rocks and like whatever, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like it all comes down to the same. It's a conversation with the buyers and a conversation with the list agent, and those two things combined, you kind of come up with the offer terms and the fluff in between.
One of the things y'all were talking about earlier is you just mentioned it too, like this was a month ago. I have a couple of buyers now that
So
I
sad to
started working with them in like December or January. So we covered finances in the first meeting, but that's changed now. And getting them to adjust to what we're at, because to them, they don't understand, it's only been 2, 3, 4 months, why
What
am I
changed?
having now? Yeah, and so, how are y'all having those conversations and making that smooth, because they're upset. They're upset that now it's different than it was.
Have you wrote an offer for them recently where they've like lost out on a house at all yet, or no?
Yeah.
Recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you do?
So I don't have, to be honest with you, I don't think I even have any buyers from that long ago, but I would imagine that, actually, I take that back. I have buyers that bought with me one of my first houses I ever sold. So back in maybe 2019, they want to buy a house now, and they want to keep theirs as a rental because they're having a kid and they want a bigger house. And they messaged me and they're like, all right, so is everything the same? And they knew very little from the beginning, but so sellers are paying my closing costs, we'll get repairs. So it made it very easy to just kind of go into how the market has kind of evolved and shifted. So obviously when they were looking in December, it was still a seller's market. So this situation might have been just like a little bit easier because I was able to kind of explain the difference. But I usually kind of go into, in December, there may have been 100 houses and 1,000 buyers that were competing for those 100 houses. Now the market has evolved into there's 100 houses and there's 5,000 buyers that are looking. So the cost of competing, the cost of the houses is increasing, and that's kind of why you're seeing we're getting 10 to 20 offers, maybe 40 something on a house. All those people are giving everything they have because they just need a home right now. So I kind of just play it into, I just use examples that people can kind of relate to of how much more the competition is and why those deposits and things are going up.
I use a regroup script, and I'll call them and I'll say, hey, I know that this is what we talked about back in December, and this is what's changed.
Mhm.
And you need to look at your buyer and kind of, are you guys familiar with the DISC?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so you look at the DISC personality. Are they a D, or are they a high D? If they're a high D, you just need to direct.
Mhm.
This is the numbers. Here's where it is. If they're a high I, like you might have a, you're gonna have a different conversation. I am a data person. I like to show you, and then we can talk about how you feel about it.
I like this.
But by just calling them and just honestly, any problem you have is going to get worse with time if you don't just go ahead and have that conversation, nip it in the bud. And doing a regroup where you just call them and say, listen, I know this was the conversation that we had in December. Here's what's changed. How can I help you? And when you're coming from that place of contribution instead of, here's what's changed, sucks to be you.
Right.
I mean, who's gonna respond well to that anyway? But I have some scripts I'd be happy to send you that I do with that, like.
Yeah, that'd be great, because even like with clients who haven't bought a house in a while,
Mhm.
like I've got a guy right now, he just lost out on the house that he told me yesterday was the one. But he thinks putting a cash offer should mean he gets a discount. That is like in that
Mhm.
mindset from years
Yeah.
ago now, or even just 3 years ago that mind worked. But no matter who told him, me or me passing along what the seller's
Yeah,
agent said,
listen.
it didn't matter. It wasn't that he doesn't have that much cash that they countered with, but the principle, he couldn't get past the principle of paying cash and not getting anything in return for it, like a discount.
So then he doesn't fit, so you've got your ready, willing, and able, so he
Mhm.
doesn't fit within the willing.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true.
Mhm.
But I wanna make sure I'm doing everything I can to educate him, and if there's a way that I can reshift that, I would like to know.
What's his motivation? Why does he want to buy a house?
Mhm.
Yeah, that would be, they have a business here they just started, so they wanna get closer, so they can service the people here better.
And I think that kind of goes back to what we talked about a little while ago, is every minute, literally every minute,
Yep.
like it's not every day anymore, it's every
every
minute
minute.
that passes, everything's gonna get more expensive.
Right, their interest rate, like things like that, like if they're like, oh, well, we'll just wait, and it's like, okay, but in 3, 4, 5 months, you might not be able to afford this house if interest rates keep going up, like this mortgage payment that you love right now. It's gonna end, like I just tell them, like that extra percent on your mortgage isn't, the couple $1,000s extra you're gonna have to pay right now to compete, they can't even compare those numbers, so
Right.
I always, it goes back to what she said, I try to be funny and be me, and then educate them at the same time and give them things they can like try to understand. And that's why I asked if they had lost out on an offer. Usually once they lose out, and then I tell them, hey, the listing agent told me that they picked one with higher due diligence, or they had a higher appraised value. Like they know, like I'm not just telling you this just to tell you this because I want you to get ripped off on a house. I'm telling you this because we sell houses every single day, and like we meet all the time to go over every Keller Williams agent, like trials and like things that have worked. And I know. But sometimes it takes them learning it to then be
Because they
like,
don't know yet.
right, because they don't, I
And
feel like
I
they
have
always think sometimes like we're, like I don't care whether you buy a house or not, like if you would love to buy a house, I want to assist you, but like there's like sometimes they need to go through it.
I would just ask him how long, you can ask him in a way. I'm very direct with most of my
Mhm.
buyers, but how long are you willing to be away from your business? And what is that? You can attach a dollar amount to that for him.
Mhm.
Like you can help him figure that out, because if he's willing to pay cash, he's got the money.
Mhm.
He's got a leg up on everybody else in our
Mhm.
market.
Yeah.
And if that every minute that passes, it's gonna get more expensive. So is this the same guy from December?
He's one of them, yeah.
Okay, so I would show him what could he have bought in December for that amount of money, and I would show him what he could buy today.
That'll work.
And you put it out there. You let him, because his response will tell you if he's actually motivated to get here.
Well, and right now, this is getting off topic, but right now he's like, I'd rather just go get pre-qualified and get a loan if I'm not gonna get a deal and not use my cash. And
So you're not gonna get a deal whether you're pre-qualified or not,
Mhm.
or even if it's pre-qualified.
right.
So he wants to
Yeah,
pay interest on that?
I really like what you said, pull up what closed in December.
I do, I didn't think of that,
And
that's
bring
good.
that to him and show him, listen. Because I just had a conversation with an appraiser who found a house out in Hope Mills that has a 10% appreciation. And he says, don't think I won't use it when it comes to getting houses to appraise. A 10% appreciation is
Huge.
a huge thing, because the last one that I had that had an appreciation on it was a 5%. So that's double. So in doing that, he's only spending more money in the long run.
Yeah, it's hard for people to grasp that because they want a deal, especially people who are paying cash. They've got cash for a reason.
Right.
You're
That's
right.
true.
You know, but
Rich people are rich for a reason.
yeah, I remember my uncle was a truck driver for Publix, lived in the same house, 3-bedroom, 1 bath, drove a beat up truck. He retired and went out and bought a new boat, and we were all like, where's this money? Because he didn't spend it, you know? So his money is important to him. If he's got that kind of cash, and by showing him, back in December, you could have had this, and today you can have this. And that really might put that,
Yeah, that actually
Nice,
is
right,
really good.
before.
I like that a lot.
I like that too. Yeah, I hadn't thought about approaching it from his money's important to him and how is this costing him? Because right now he's almost got me convinced like this isn't costing him, like he's saving by not taking this, but no, he's really.
Time is money.
this.
Gas too.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think
Gas
it's
prices.
important with that buyer consultation.
Yep.
Because when I sit down, if I spend an hour with somebody, even if they can't buy, I know so much more about them to then have those conversations later. To have a powerful, hey, let's sit down and regroup about what's going on. And I can tie it back to, well, my kid needs to start at Jack Britt. Okay, so is it more important? I'll ask them, is it more important for your kid to start at Jack Britt? Or is it more important to get a deal? And they'll tell you. And then you know where you sit with them.
And
On
they
where-
might say a deal.
And then you know how much effort and energy to apply to it. Not every buyer is a great buyer. Quite honestly, Karen and I were having that conversation the other day. Do you mind if I use your example?
You go right ahead,
Okay.
girl.
So she and I were talking, she's got a buyer that Karen's motivation is here with her buyers. She's gonna get them in that house. She's gonna make sure they see it. She's gonna make sure they're one of the first people there. Her buyer's motivation
Oh, boy.
is here. And I asked her the question, I said, so why are you jumping up here when they're barely getting off the ground?
Well, it was like pulling teeth, trying to figure out how motivated they were.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't slapping me in the face, it was still just plowing through it. It was difficult
To pinpoint it. And have been sitting down and having those conversations, because one of the questions I asked her is, I said, okay, the 3 hours you might spend driving to a showing, showing them some homes, going home, writing an offer you know that's not gonna win, what could you have been doing with that time to find a more qualified buyer? Not that these people aren't important, they need a house too. But if I've spent that time in that consultation, my time's important too. I've got a family, I've got things, and if I know up front that you're here, I'm still gonna love on you, I'm still gonna nurture you, I'm not gonna push you away to the side, it doesn't mean you're not important. It's that my time here is more important with people who can jump.
What is that saying? You can't help people that don't want to be helped sometimes. If they literally are just like in a rental or they live with mom and whatever, and they're never gonna like you said, you're still gonna talk to them, you're gonna give them the information, you're gonna let them know you're there, you'll check in with them, but there's only, because I feel like we have, especially like a new agent, right? Like in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, every buyer wants to buy a house, and this person wrote back like, I want to buy a house, and you go out on all these appointments and you don't know any better, and then now you kind of look back and you see other people do it, and I'm like, you actually think they're gonna buy a house? Like, because you just hear it in conversation. So I feel like you can't make people buy a house, and you can't make them have the motivation, like they need to want to do it, and then we can help them and get them in a house. But
And that stuff is important too, because that's experience.
Yep.
Especially when you're first starting out, you jump and you
you're
run.
starry-eyed and like,
Yeah,
this
but
person talked to me, they're gonna buy a house.
Karen's been in the business long enough that she knows, and that was the conversation we had is your time is here.
Yep.
And theirs is here. And you either need to figure out and have a regroup to get you on the same page, or know and prioritize who you have in your pipeline. I think that's really, that's the most important thing to me is prioritizing who do I need to find a house for this week? Doesn't mean I'm not talking to my other buyers.
Right.
Which means I'm not jumping in the car with them.
Well, and it hit me the other day when we were looking at Haymound, and they said the HVAC was old, so they wanted to put in a low offer. I'm
Oh,
like, so you didn't hear me the other 8 times I've explained this, huh? Okay, I'm done. I'm done for a little while, gotta walk away.
Up in there.
You keep thinking, hopefully they heard me this time.
and they seem sometimes in person, like they hear you, and then you do it again, and it's kind of just like the same thing over and over again.
What did you just say?
But I think that's where it's important to go back to them and say,
Yep.
listen, we talked about this.
Yep.
And let's have another conversation about it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have those, like, I think sometimes we're afraid to offend them. Like Sandy said, she was afraid of offending
Oh,
somebody, of losing a buyer.
Yeah.
Is it offensive or is it actually helping them move forward in the process?
Right.
Now, it can be offensive in the way you deliver it. You're like, put your head on your shoulders, what are you doing?
Yeah,
You don't have
hey,
to say
yeah, I
that.
just told you this at the last house we were at.
Right, but you can,
That's what I would.
I know, Karen would be like, idiot.
Until I do that,
I know,
I'd be thinking,
you'd be thinking it.
yeah.
And you probably call me later and say, you know,
I
but
feel like real estate is full of hard conversations. Most of them are hard conversations, especially right now. It's really not a happy time to be a buyer. Like,
And while we know that,
they don't.
we need to make sure that we aren't reiterating to them, God, I hate that this is happening to you right now.
Yep.
We need to keep it on the upbeat. You know what? We're gonna get you in a house and everything is, we're gonna do everything we can.
change the way you look at things,
Yeah.
things you look at change.
Yeah, because if we are, Trisha said this probably 6 or 7 years ago, and it stuck with me. We are the emotional thermostat of the transaction.
Yes.
So if we are hot, your client's gonna get hot. If we are emotional, like, can you believe what that agent did?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then of course they're gonna be like, no, what did they do? And then they're gonna get all crazy. So
You think about this is their investment.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, we're a part of the process,
It's
but
not
they're
our
more
money.
emotionally tied, and if my thermostat's not down, now I'm not hot, like, I get mad. And I'll come see Heather, I'll go, no, and then when I call my client, I'm like, hey, here's what happened, here's what we're gonna do to move forward.
Right, and there might be a small setback, and we're gonna figure out what we need to do to get through it.
Mhm.
Get mad, just don't share it with your client.
I think one of the best positives to focus on right now is that, like, if they were to wait, they probably wouldn't get a better interest rate, so.
Mhm.
Right, that's what I think.
Yeah, you bring
I'm
it,
so
you bring it
glad I'm
back
talking
to,
to
it's
you,
like,
to you today, because if you didn't start for another
Yeah.
year,
yeah, and just bring it back to those, like, long-term savings.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I know this is frustrating right now, but in the long run, even though you're gonna end up spending more upfront, you're gonna end up saving a lot of money in interest.
And I wanna be respectful of you guys' time, it's 2:00, I'm happy to stay and chat, but if you guys need to go, I understand it is 2:00. But I was gonna say I was listening to a Dave Ramsey podcast the other day, and he was talking about, a gentleman called in and he said, you know, we wanna sell our house, we wanna move to a better school district, we want to do all of the things, right? And he said, so do I sell now at the top of the market and wait for it to cool down? And Dave Ramsey was like, well, why would you do that? You know, like what is the, and he's like, well, we can move in with my wife's parents and blah, blah. And he said, okay. And he said, so what is gonna be the market cool down for you? Is it because, and what he was basically saying, what he's projecting, you know, we all don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what's gonna happen in a year or two. He's projecting that because with COVID, lenders tightened up their restrictions, right? It's not like 2008, you get a loan, you get a loan, you get a loan,
Loans for everybody.
everybody bust, right? He said they've tightened up their restrictions. People who are buying houses can actually buy them, qualify for them right now. And he said if you wait, yes, you might not have the competition, but the market is gonna continue to increase. So yeah, you might not have that competition, but you're still gonna pay more for that house because the value is just gonna continue to rise. And he was like, so you're getting it both ways. You're buying at the top of the market and you're making an even spot. Because you're selling at the top and you're buying at the top.
But you're gonna end up with something.
Right.
So I was running numbers the other day just because I'm a number nerd. And so it's like, oh my God, there's, you know, a housing shortage. We don't have as many houses coming on the market. We've only sold about 250 more houses between now and I guess it was maybe end of last week than we did last year from January 1 to the end of last week. So it's only about 250 more. So it's not, there's really not a shortage. We just have more people coming in. And so the houses are going faster. Which I was really surprised to see that number was what it was, because I was figuring with as many people who had rentals, they're like, oh, let me take advantage of this and go ahead and sell this bad boy, that we would have had more. But it's, and go ahead and get ready, because once Apple starts putting that $1 billion into the Triangle area, and those folks won't be able to find anywhere to live, they're gonna be coming down, not necessarily to Fayetteville, but you know, we have a lot of buyers that are in Sanford and Cameron and things of that nature, and we're gonna lose those to the people who are coming to the Triangle area.
We're gonna have that Apple money.
Yeah. California buyers.
Well, they're already in the
Cheapest
thing is they're already
Apple.
driving. They're in their car for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day when they're having to commute back and forth from the office to home. So driving from Broadway to Research Triangle Park, they're be like, no big deal.
The buyers that I'm working with are mostly out of states, and they'll tell me, I'm okay with a commute of an hour to hour and a half. They're up front with me on that, so I'm like, okay, that gives me a little bit more of an expansion view.
And I have a buyer right now.
Shopping for them real hard.
I have a buyer right now who
Big radio.
has no money. Like literally, he just bought a house a year ago in Clarksville, put a bunch of money into it to fix it up, and then he came down on orders. So he's not in a position to sell his house right now. He's gonna rent it out. And he told me the other day, he's like, no, I don't have any money. You know, we had the cash conversation, and his needs were very specific, and that's where we kind of went back to our regroup. Is I called him and I said, there's 6 houses on the market that met your criteria. I said 2 of them you'd potentially be able to compete with, and he hated both of them. And so today I said, you know what? I'm gonna look at another area. And I sent him 3 houses. I said, here's 3 houses. They meet your criteria, but it's not in Sanford. And we had to kind of bring it back to reality. He's a single dude who wants to live closer to Raleigh so that he can go do, I guess, whatever single men do. I don't know. But I asked him why that was important. And he was like, well, I like to spend a lot of time in Raleigh. And I was like, okay. Are you gonna be spending so much time in Raleigh that you would be willing to be homeless and live in your toy hauler? That's what he would have to do. Versus finding something that might be another 20-minute drive to Raleigh. And, you know, we played it his way for a week. We looked, there was nothing out there. We submitted an offer. I just told him, I said, this is what you're gonna have to do. And if he's not gonna do it, I'll cut him loose. Like he's actually one of Dina's husband's very good friends. And I told her today, I was like, I don't know how to help him. You know, there's literally nothing else that I can do for him. And she's like, yeah. As long as you're honest about it, you know, and that's where that regrouping and just, is that really what's important? What are you willing to give up to get what you said you wanted? And sometimes it's nothing they're willing, they'll expand. Just bring it back to their motivation.
Good stuff.
Anybody else have questions, something you're struggling with? I'm sure you think of something.
Oh, yeah.
What are your take on backup offers?
I love a good backup offer.
I love good backup offers.
Are you guys writing backup offers?
I have.
Are you familiar
Yeah.
with backup offers?
Tell me more.
Okay.
They were.
Have you done them?
I have done 2 so far,
Okay.
As well as what's.
and neither one of them has actually came into fruition yet, but we tried.
Yeah, like what's the benefit of that as opposed to just watching it every day and then if it goes back on the market, writing an offer?
Because if they accept your backup offer, and they know someone's terminating, that buyer that has that backup offer in, it doesn't go back on the market, it is that buyer's, and they don't have to forego any due diligence money or anything like that until their offer actually becomes a contract.
And when they already have an offer that they've accepted, they're not so nitpicky on a backup offer. So they're not counter offering and no, we've got to have this and blah, blah, blah. They'll take often, it's, you can kind of weasel in at a lower amount.
And that doesn't change.
And the flip side to that too, though, is if you put in a phenomenal backup offer, let's say the buyer comes back that's currently under contract and they want the walls painted and the floor redone and the countertops, it's more of a motivation for that seller to not do any repairs because you submitted an offer that says you won't be asking for anything. So they just, we're not doing anything. That buyer walks and now you're a buyer. So you could get away obviously with getting a little bit better of an offer in and like saving money, but if you put in something better than might have already been there, or that it's a really good backup,
Or you
obviously.
match it.
Right, or it's the same offer and they have more motivation to not do certain things and they know they have another offering buyer right there.
And the biggest benefit is you're not gonna go back in and play the rat race
Mm-hmm.
because they've already signed your backup offer. As soon as that
Yep.
other offer is terminated and they communicate to you that you're now the primary, you're in, you're done.
And I still look in the meantime, like they go in
Yeah.
and if we see something else, you can, same way, you just let them know then to, withdraw the backup offer, but.
And the biggest benefit to that is, the only thing that's due at time of backup offer is earnest money. So, learn this from my lovely friend Heather. What she has taught me to do is when I'm submitting that backup offer, it's got due diligence, and then we do additional earnest money, and the date is date of primary. They're not out any money until they become the primary contract.
I like that.
And with a backup offer, you're still gonna write the full offer. You check your little box, and then the backup offer addendum literally states, I think it's, you put in a number of days, you don't put a date. It's not like we're gonna close September 1st, it's 30 days from becoming primary. Same thing with due diligence, it's X number of days from becoming primary. And by putting that additional earnest money, they're ready to go. And I have found that it gives people more security.
It does.
They say, okay, I've got my backup offer in here, and then relax a little bit.
Yeah.
We're still going out and looking at
Yeah,
stuff.
still looking.
And then the first question I have is, oh, we love this house, we're ready. And I say, okay, if this house was to come back on the market, right, and you're gonna be the primary on this one, we have a backup, but you love this house, do you love it enough to go ahead and terminate this? Because you can terminate your backup offer at any time. So it gives them a little bit of that like cushion of like, okay, I've got a backup offer out there. And then sometimes they're a little more relaxed going into.
Which allows you to actually think about the next, and that's how we got our contract under, contract, because the backup offer eased the tension.
Yeah. How many backup offers have you written that have become contracts?
Oh.
Out of how many?
Oh, God. I think I have 4 backup offers in play right now.
You do, okay.
Wow.
And 2 have came, I haven't got one yet.
And I had one that really motivated the listing agent to get the primary closed because I don't think that he was very familiar with backup offers and didn't really realize that the offer that would have come through with mine was about 10 grand less because they didn't negotiate.
Right, they just signed it.
They just
Yeah.
signed it. I doubt that he's gonna do that again. He'll probably be a lot more vigilant. But they are less likely to nitpick. Now, some of them will, and they'll come back and say, okay, well, but when you do it, just say, hey, I'd like to do a backup with what I've got. If they say yes, fantastic for your buyer, but also let them know that, hey, they accepted that. They might not 100% know what they're doing on backup offers because it can provide a level of unrealistic expectation for your buyer if they had an agent who accepted an offer as it was written, because that did happen to me with one of them. It was just that they said, okay, yeah, we'll do it, and they signed it. And my buyer says, well, then why do I, if they're gonna accept this, then why do I need to keep going up in all my terms? I said, they probably weren't 100% sure what they really did. And I was just really pushy to be like, okay, so here's the backup offer. Gonna get it signed? Are you signing it? I haven't gotten it yet. When you give it to me. I'm not.
Well, and sometimes it's just the security of knowing that if something were to fall out, they've already got something there, so they may be less likely to nitpick it because they want the security of getting their house sold. You know, we don't know that seller's motivation. So maybe they just need somebody who's ready to jump and they don't have to put it back on the market.
No more showings, no anything, it's just an offer. So I haven't had a backup offer accepted, but from speaking with the agent and wanting to put a backup offer in, we put the backup offer in, 2 days later, she messaged me, she had another house right down the street, same floor plan, same everything, and my buyers ended up getting that house. So sometimes it's not even just the backup offer, like you could put one in, but if they kind of know what you're looking for and you build that relationship and like it kind of all ties together.
How much time do you have to submit a backup offer? So you find out your offer, you can accept it, and then what is?
At any time,
Anytime.
anytime that they're still in contract with the other buyer.
And if your client finds another house, do you have to withdraw the backup before?
Well, what I do is, it's very unlikely that, let's say your buyer found another house they loved and they were like, nope, this is it. Well, you told that offer's accepted.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very unlikely that you're gonna get an accepted offer on this house and then the same day the other buyer's gonna pull out of this one. So you wanna give them that security and say, okay, and we still submit offers. We're still out there looking,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
still, all of that, but until I have an actual accepted contract, do I terminate the backup?
And there's not an actual document for termination of backup. It's just communication to the listing agent.
You can actually do it on the unilateral termination.
Is that what you
It
want?
is, it's a checkbox that says termination of backup offer.
Well, that's not on the backup offer, no.
But you can, you can terminate it. And I got one that we terminated it, and like 30 days later, the agent sent me, he's like, oh, here's the signed termination, so sorry. And I was like, it was terminated the moment I communicated it to you. Like, it was done. So you don't have to worry about getting that other signature. It's done. You've already terminated. But they're useful if your buyer has the time.
Analysts said at one time that between 20 and 30% of the sales were the backup offers, and that was a couple of months ago. So
Wow.
that's when they were teaching the course on it, and that's why they were teaching that course.
I didn't realize it was that high.
That the
20 to
MLS
30%,
office,
is that what you said?
That's
20
what
to
they said
30%?
then.
That's really high.
Yeah,
That's
that's very high.
I think it might be, maybe 2 to 3%?
well, like a lot of were over, the appraisals weren't meeting. And I mean, that's why he was saying more about y'all need to be doing backup offers, because he just said I was a little way to buy now.
Maybe 20 to 30% of the contracts that fall out
Oh.
are then bought by a backup offer. That would make sense.
Oh, that makes more
That
sense.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes more sense. Okay, so other things that terminate and fall. Yeah, that would
That would
be
make
more
sense,
realistic.
So just read it before you do it.
And ask for help.
Yes.
I know I've done them.
Yeah, I
Laura's
always
done
ask for
them,
help.
Heather's done them, like,
One of the first ones that I did, the other agent had no clue what to do on a backup offer, and she said, I don't really know what I'm doing on this. And I said, okay. She had anyway. So we got it all done. And so make sure that you read them and understand them, because she just didn't know how to do it. And it's fine, I helped her when she didn't help me.
Did you invite her to come to KW?
No, absolutely not, and I will not. And if anyone tells me that they're inviting her to come to something, I will probably tell you that she doesn't belong here.
She
that's
needs
not
help.
our culture.
You know what? Not everybody belongs here.
But I do find some listing agents don't know that, like, I had one that I was like, oh, my client would be interested in submitting a backup offer. She's like, oh yeah, our seller's accepted. And I was like, I haven't sent you anything.
No, you need to sign it.
Right.
That's what she said. She was like, okay, we're good, so we have a backup offer, and I said,
No.
fantastic, great, what I'm gonna do is resend it to you, and let's get it signed and I'll execute it and then that way. As for command with backup offers, I did ask Trisha if we were supposed to put backup offers in command, and she said no, so. So it's
I don't know the answer to that.
she said no.
Okay.
So
Place like that.
she's the one that checks them. She said no. I was like, okay. Saves me a lot.
I guess until it came to fruition, you wouldn't need to add it.
However,
to be in command, but you gotta keep it in your document.
I was gonna say yes. However, it is an offer that you've written, so you do have to keep it.
Mine had the broker in charge had to call me because the agent didn't know what they were signing. So she was trying to weasel out of the backup
On the
offer.
backup offer,
So I'm like, well,
was it in the benefit of your buyer?
yeah,
Good. Another agent that didn't read.
yeah, that's exactly.
But that's also, I think that's why it's really important as buyers agents to be in contract classes. Understand
Yeah.
what your buyers are signing. There are too many agents out there that don't know what the contract says. I had somebody trying to argue with me and say, we had an appraisal that was late. We were still within our, she was like, we're terminating. And I was like, great, give me all this money back. And she's like, well, we don't have to, we're past closing date. And I said, yeah, that little, she didn't know it was in there. And I mean, she was mad at me, but
It's there.
I mean,
Read it.
you know, and you explain it to them in a kind
Yeah.
way. It's, but there's a lot of agents out there that don't know what they're doing.
Half the buyers don't read the things they're signing.
No.
Sometimes I send them out and it's like, what, 2 seconds later, click, 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 and I'm like, I literally will ask, I'm like, did you read? And I'm like, cause I make mistakes, so like, you would like, oh,
Well, that's something I also go over in my initial consultation as an example, offer to purchase. So that way, when we get to the offer,
It's not that
they've
we're
seen
signing
it.
they've
Yeah.
seen it, they understand a little bit, and then they'll typically say, oh, where did you put in my due
Yep.
diligence? And they'll ask me questions so that I know that they've read, you know. But it's, again, education saves everybody a lot of time in the end.
Because a lot of those programs that we use will just jump automatically to.
Yep.
Where there's a sign and you
An
just.
initial.
Yeah, it doesn't give them an opportunity to read it.
Molly, what's on the chat?
Michelle wrote,
Michelle said that she did that with a buyer where they didn't have a whole lot of cash. So they looked at homes that had been on the market and needed some extra work. And she was able to get her buyers into a home with $20,000 in equity because nobody else wanted to put the work in.
cause it needed new carpet, paint, and they had wallpaper in the kitchen and they wanted shiny new, so she told them, all you're gonna need is X, Y, and Z, and they bought the house and it was obviously listed for a good deal, cause now they have $20,000 of equity in the house and they updated everything themselves and they love their house.
Because if you're gonna spend the money,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think sometimes people get caught up in that, like, you could take that $10,000 that you were willing to put over list on this house that was ready to go, and we could look at something that might need that carpet and paint, might need, you know, maybe it needs a new
If
roof.
they're
I don't
able
know.
to have that vision.
Right, well, I
Something
walk in and
just-
say that, I'm like, this is a house, you need to see the vision, and
Yeah.
I do the visioning for them because we see them all the time.
My specialty.
Yep. I got the vision for you.
I love
But-
that.
You can set, like, you know, because what is the difference? If you were willing to spend it on this house, why not put it into something and make it your own?
Right.
You know, and sometimes people, they just, money is a touchy subject
Mhm.
for people. And when you can put it in, I had one that he had like $10,000, he had 5,000 in earnest, 5,000 in due diligence. And the seller came back and he said, well, what if they don't fix anything? And I said, okay, so I said, are you willing to walk away from your $5,000 over a $700 repair?
Right.
And then when he thought about it that way, he was like, oh, that would be dumb. And I was like,
I use that one all the time. Before,
Yeah.
like if they get the home inspection, like what if they don't do this? That's when I have that conversation. You're gonna lose $4,000. the market has changed since the 3 weeks ago that you went under contract. So now you're gonna be paying even more versus even if it's $2,000 of repairs, you're still not spending the money you spend to find a new house, so.
And now you have this money down the toilet,
Yeah.
which you can't get back.
Better yet is to have that conversation when you're explaining due diligence.
Yeah.
What is the risk involved? What would make you walk away from this house? Would it be a $700?
And that is another
plumbing,
motivation
whatever?
conversation,
Mhm.
like you just hit the nail on the head, because what would make you walk away?
Right.
And I had a buyer who, this was like, she finally went under contract, but it was like her 6th or 7th offer. And I told her, I said, even though we felt like maybe the seller was playing hardball a little too much, I said, are you willing on principle to lose this, or are you willing to take the high road in this situation and wake up in that bathroom you love in a month from now?
Mm-hmm.
And then the high road you took doesn't even, like, you're not even remembering that at that point, you know?
Like, pardon my French, sometimes it turns into a pissing match.
Mhm.
Yep.
And you bring it back to that motivation, and you'll be like, oh, you know what, it's not that big a deal, like you said. It's,
Well, it's a pride thing, and you have to kind of find a way around that.
Yep.
sometimes.
Goes back to us being a thermostat.
yep.
We're a therapist.
Moral of the story, yeah, we're thermostats, that's our job.
Well,
Yeah.
it's now 2:30, so
Yay!
I know you guys have places to be too.
Thanks, ladies. Thank you.
You're welcome. Both of our phone numbers and emails are up there, so snap a photo if you need anything from, I'm sure either